Welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I have really been looking forward to this episode. I am a believer in a couple of things. I believe that there are enough workers to work in senior living to fill every position when we get the culture right. And I believe, of course, there are enough residents to fill every unit. And that happens when we get the senior living experience, the living experience right, and when we tell our story right. So I met Jeffrey Farber, Dr. Jeffrey Farber. I guess I have to put that doctor in there to do it appropriately. Last summer in Napa at the Senior Living Innovation Forum, I was astonished that I had never run across what you're doing. But he has a nursing home in the greater New York area where their CNA turnover is 10% a year. And what makes this really unique is they're unionized, which means that they're not paying bonuses. They've just created a place where people love coming to work. That was a longer introduction than I told you we were going to do. We're going to get into conversation about how he's doing that. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So first off, I want to remind you that Foresight TV is brought to you by KARE. They are the non-staffing agency. And what that means is they operate more like Uber or Lyft. They provide you great team members, temporary staff for those shifts that you need to fill that you can't find anybody, and they do it without charging you 2 arms and 3 legs, which you don't have, that a traditional staffing agency does. And so they are a way to really make sure that you're providing the kind of quality care that everybody really wants to do, and to keep costs under control. They would love to work with you. They're easy to work with. It's an app-like approach to it, so not hard to sign up, not hard to make it happen. They will send you great people. And if you're a caregiver and you're thinking, I need to pick up some extra shifts, it's also a great place to go. So I would really recommend that you check them out. We really appreciate their commitment to making the lives of people who live and work in senior living better, and that's why they support this show. Jeff, welcome. Let's start by just talking a little bit about who you are, your background, and your community.
Sure, Steve. Pleasure to be here with you today on Foresight TV. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am a physician, and I think the two sort of aspects of my professional nature that go hand in hand for me and what give me the greatest joy in doing what I do every day is as being a physician and an executive. So I'm a geriatrician by training, one of the very few people who, after training in internal medicine and getting board certified as an internist, decides to take a year or two. I took 2 years to do fellowship training in geriatrics medicine, so that I can get double board certified and specialize in caring for older people. And with that comes the immense privilege of getting paid less than if I hadn't done it, right? So it's one of the really horrible realities that just speaks to the ageism entrenched in our society, that even within the healthcare ecosystem and academic training and such, it's devalued that way. So I'm a physician, I'm a geriatrician, I love caring for older people, that's what I do. And in my current role as the CEO and president at the New Jewish Home, a 175-year-old mission-driven nonprofit health system for older adults in New York City area. I love leadership and love the team and what we do, and gives me great deep satisfaction.
So we're going to get to the staffing thing in a minute, but one of the things I have to ask is, you went through medical school and all the internship and residency, and then the geriatrician, sort of seems like a big, how did you end up as an executive rather than a practicing physician?
That's a great question, Steve. I'll try and be brief because I could do this lengthy, but I'll do my best. My plan, Steve, was to hang a shingle. I wanted to be self-employed. I wanted to run my own medical practice. I wanted to care for older adults as a geriatrician. And I was convinced that I could make it happen, even though as I was training, people were telling me, you'll never make it happen. You know, geriatricians can't make enough with billing with the RVU system, and patients have too many problems, and it takes too long to care for them, and it won't work. But I kind of wanted and equally envisioned I would enjoy the business side of running my own small business practice and caring for older people. But then during training, I guess, and it was my fellowship at Mount Sinai, where I really, for the first time, like enjoyed working in the hospital setting and realized that there was a lot that I wanted to learn and do. And I had opportunity to start working with other non-clinical aspects of the healthcare system there. I did an internship with the CFO. I got involved in some revenue cycle initiatives. I actually ended up building an appeals management shop and then a clinical documentation quality program and engaging physicians and so on and so on. I just sort of, my career moved in the direction of physician leadership, and then figured I'll study business along the way too, because my clinical tool set is valuable. And I think there are other ways to think about problems that I was trying to solve in this aspect of my work. And so I went to school while I was working full time and studied business and got an MBA. And I find that also really useful. And then slowly I sort of started with 80-20, which is common for us, 80% clinical work, 20% dedicated to administrative aspects, in this case with the CFO. And then over time that just sort of flipped, you know, over many years as I got more and more involved in other aspects of the system, and most notably in population health management. Another one of my big passions in life is value-based care, pop health. And before I left to become the CEO at the New Jewish Home, which is now 7 years ago almost, I was the chief medical officer at Mount Sinai Health System for population health management, and really love that world. And hope and believe in it that it'll spread also to aging services for sure.
Well, I would actually love to have probably a whole nother session on population health and value-based care. And it's an area that I'm really, really excited about. At NIC a couple of weeks ago, they had the head of Medicare was interviewed by David Grabowski, and it was the first time Medicare's like really paid any attention to senior living. And that's a big win. And I just think we've got so much opportunity, and we have so much that needs fixing. I'm 69, and so I'm getting to experience the Medicare system. And when she talked about, I'm going to get on my little soapbox for a minute here, that she talked a lot about how this goal of sort of creating this very holistic, individualized care that would care for seniors. And what I'm finding in my healthcare system, and I blame the healthcare system, not necessarily my insurance company, I have to fight for everything. I have made myself a pest even to the CEO of the Sutter Health System, because things are just not being done. And I wonder what happens if you're 85 or 90 and you don't really know how to push on the system. So big issue. But let's talk about let's start with New Jewish Home. And then I'd like to talk about your culture philosophy, what you did when you came in, and how did you get to this amazing 10% turnover?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So let me give you a little brief background. I mean, the New Jewish Home, the history is fascinating. And by the way, I've got calligraphy, board meeting minute bound books on my shelf behind my desk from, the 19th century, documenting what we discussed, 150 years ago in caring for older people in New York City, where we were at the time. And so, it was started in 1848, and there was a Jewish woman, Hannah Leo, who from her synagogue decided that there were, needs for older Jewish women who were towards the end of life in the community. This is before electricity, before plumbing, before, lots of stuff we take for granted, and started essentially what I would envision as a home care operation for older people, primarily women in the beginning. And then in 1870, realized that part of what they needed to do was provide adequate housing. And so I think it's kind of the first nursing home in the country before there were ever such things, because what they did was they bought a brownstone building down in the Chelsea neighborhood in New York City and used it to house older, poor women towards the end of life that they were caring for. Then 13 years later, the needs were growing tremendously, and we actually moved to where I am now, which is on 105th, 106th Street on the Upper West Side. And we've been serving that community ever since we built. At that time, it was a lot of new things. I think it was the first building that had an elevator, to go up to the second and the third floor. It was, remarkable sort of new things happening. And the organization has had a real tremendous history of innovations and proud moments in caring for older adults. Highlights are, in the 50s, we actually were a hospital and became a Joint Commission accredited hospital for older people. We were the first academic nursing home and training center in the country. When Mount Sinai founded the first geriatrics department in an American medical school in the early 1980s, Jewish Home was the main training site. And the leader at the time, the legendary Dr. Les Lebo, was the founding co-chair of that department, together with the late Bob Butler, who was the founder, of course, of the National Institute of Aging at the time. So there's this long-standing ethos of sort of the academic trifecta that's imbued within our culture. It's the clinical care, it's the education and training, and research. So we have our own institutional review board and do really tremendous research together with other organizations too, and notably with Mount Sinai, who we partner with deeply. And we train hundreds of adult learners across multiple disciplines every year, from nursing students, clergy, medical students and fellows, internal medicine residents, all coming, social workers do internships with us. And it's just part of the culture that we've built. And so now fast forward 175 years later, and I'd say the best way to describe the New Jewish Home is as a health system for older adults. And our mission is all about enhancing older adults' lives by empowering older adults to enhance their purpose and well-being. And we do it through a whole portfolio of rather innovative healthcare services, some of which I imagine we might talk about today.
Good. Well, so let's actually talk about the services. So you're not an acute hospital anymore,
right?
Right.
But one time our name was actually Jewish Home and Hospital.
I'm sorry.
Back in the past, our name was Jewish Home and Hospital. When I started training at Mount Sinai in 2004, that was still the name. And that's how we kind of knew it. So yeah, but we're not a hospital right now. But I do have some ideas about what I think we could be doing that are exciting too for the future.
Is that right? Well, I obviously we don't have enough time to talk about all the things I want to talk about. So you're skilled nursing, assisted living as well, all skilled nursing?
We have two large skilled nursing facilities with over 800 beds, one in Manhattan, like I described on 106th Street, and the other 300-bed facility is in Mamaroneck, Westchester County. We do have assisted living, which is a Medicaid program, and that's in the Bronx. And we have affordable housing portfolio in the Bronx as well, which includes a 300-apartment Mitchell-Lama, low-income older adult independent living housing, and 3 Section 202, subsidized affordable older adult housing. And then, of course, home care as well, certified home health agency and a licensed home care agency and adult day models. Also the first medical adult day model in New York back in the 1970s, and the only one to reopen in the Bronx after the pandemic. And we're growing and expanding services. And I was just there Wednesday visiting and on site to meet with folks. It was really nice.
So do you find that, do you use the term daycare?
For this model, we use adult day. We often just say our adult day, and we often want to stress the medical model because it's not a social sort of issue. We have a lot of,
Well, I've got my 91-year-old stepfather lives with us, and he frankly doesn't get enough socialization from us. And I keep thinking that he needs adult social model daycare, but daycare as a term just sounds so demeaning, right? So let's talk about this culture that you've created where you have a 10% turnover. I mean, it is not uncommon when I talk to particularly nursing home operators to have 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, even 100% turnover. I know that I've had Rob Leibowitz on with Goodwin House. They have a very low turnover. I'm not actually sure it's as low as yours, but I also know that one of the things that's unique about them is they're mostly senior living, and I think their pay rate is sort of above average, which really, it's easy to look at that and say, well, yeah, they can pay more money, but you're not in that situation. So how did you get there? And what was it? Maybe I'm going to start with this. What was it like when you started? Was it that way when you came on?
Yeah, great question. So I got to say, when I came on, 6 years ago, this is the top of my 7th year at Jewish Home. I undertook, of course, sort of a deep inquiry period of time, asking lots of questions, meeting with as many people as I could, traveling to different locations, where we've got both operations and offices, and, trying to get a lay of the land and understanding. And one of the things that I sort of hit on early on was, when you ask, like, where do you work for people, or, you could say I work at the New Jewish Home, and they said, well, what is that? The answers were so broad and varied. And I get it. It's a challenge. We're not a one-word answer. You could say I work at a bank, I work at a school, I work at a hospital. These are kind of easy things for people to get their head around. When you say you work at the New Jewish Home, you say, well, we take care of older people. What does that mean? Well, we have a nursing homes. So you're a nursing home? Well, no, because we also have a bunch of housing. Oh, so you're senior living? Well, no. We do a lot of training and education. And oh, so you're like a school? Well, no. And so it was a good opportunity to gather a lot of folks together, sort of go back and ask those basic questions of, like, who, what, when, where, and why, right? And re-articulate our mission, vision, and values. And I think that exercise early in my tenure was actually a really helpful, enabling process to get to where we are now, because it was inclusive, right? We were asking people for their thoughts and opinions and having it. I didn't come in with a, idea of what the answer was already. I just didn't know. And I thought about it because I was getting so many different answers, and it was hard for me to articulate succinctly, what it is that we do. And through that process, it was actually really helpful. And we highlighted and re-articulated, our mission, vision, and values. And it was a good thing that grounded folks, and then helped to sort of reinforce a culture that, and look, it was already there. I didn't come into a bad place that needed a turnaround. I give a lot of credit to everybody in my team. I certainly made a bunch of changes, after coming in, and rearranged, some leadership positions and put it where I think it needs to be. But I have tremendous people, that I rely on and trust implicitly. And that process, I think, was the right way to kick that off.
So I would assume that you guys don't have a huge recruitment problem for CNAs and nurses. Is that I guess I'm going to start by asking if that's a fair statement, a fair assumption.
Yeah, I wish that were true, but I can't say that. I mean, we realized it was 16 years ago that we were going to have trouble, staffing wise, and bringing in new, entrants into the field. Right. There were all the headwinds around aging and ageism. There was the stereotypes, and stigma of working in nursing homes and with older people, anything that relates to towards the end of life, undesirable. And so we sort of tackled and saw this coming. Nobody, I think, then would have predicted how dire the situation is today. But thankfully, we started this program, Skill Spring, 16 years ago. And we said the first thing we did was we started with a local high school in the Bronx and in Harlem, where we had operations. And we said, hey, we'd like to have some students come after school for a few years, sophomore, junior, senior year. We'll help them with school, provide resources and tutoring. And we'll also, prepare them to become certified nursing assistants, so that when they graduate high school, they can actually graduate with certifications and be readily employable. And this program just grew like wildfire, Steve. It was so successful, and actually has now grown to have over 12 public high schools. We've got over 200 students, at any given time, roaming the floors, up on the floors, doing their clinicals, learning down in the lab, skills that are necessary for their certification exams, going on college trips that we organize to take them. And almost all the students are first-generation immigrants, first in their family to ever go to college. And they're coming from high schools with about 50% graduation rates, right? Very under-resourced communities. And our students, have 100% graduation rates. And in fact, it's been so successful as a high school enrichment program and a human development program that everybody's going on to college and doing wonderful things. It actually didn't help us as much as we would have hoped initially on the workforce front. Right? Because people are doing incredible other wonderful life-enhancing things, which is why we developed another model, our second program, which we call the Young Adult Program, about 9 years ago, where we realized there were a lot of folks too, and they're kind of 18 to 25 or so age range, that were disconnected from both school and the workforce. Similar challenges, really socially disadvantaged. About 40% have had homelessness. Similar number are single parents, and a similar percent didn't graduate high school for lots of reasons. And so we work with these young adults, we prepare them, create cohorts, train them, and then provide the actual, certified nursing training. And we've done other training too. We've done for home health aides, patient care technicians, EKG techs, phlebotomists, but the bulk is certified nursing assistants. And this really works great because within about 3 months, that's the whole process that it takes to do all this work. We've got eager and well-trained and ready to go, entrance into the labor force. And this really, Steve, I got to say, saved us in the pandemic. Yeah. I mean, when we were back in the dark days in the spring of 2020, when New York City was at the global epicenter and all hell was breaking loose, we were able to have our students, come in. We just put them on the payroll and had them come in to work because there were no volunteers, right? You were banned from having volunteers at that point for a really long time. Yeah. And this workforce and this, and they were thrilled to do it. It was exciting. They were ready. They wanted to be on the front lines. It was really touching and moving. So we do have challenges, and we're always looking for nurses. I'll say our CNAs are less challenging because we do the training and we've got these great programs. And many of them have gone on to do other training as LPNs and RNs, and we have nurse managers. We got some students now, in medical school and pharmacy grad school getting their doctorate, like amazing, life-changing, opportunities. But for nurses and RNs and LPNs, we still struggle.
So how do you, where do I start on this? Let's talk a little. So where do the young people who come into this program do they come from? Are they the bottom, sort of the kids who are underperforming? Are they high performers? Do they put their hand up? Do they get volunteered? How does that work? And I'm maybe even more interested in sort of the young adults who have sort of failed in life that you have rejuvenated.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the young adult program, we work with social service agencies in our geography. And, they have access and they're providing services to similar cohorts of folks that are young adults that are, like I said, kind of rudderless. They don't have a job and they're not in school and they're disconnected from these activities and at risk, right? So sort of at risk young adults. And so we partner with several of these, and we partner with local community colleges to also then provide the textbook sort of training itself. And then we provide all the wraparound services, and our team, many of whom themselves have graduated from our program over the years. So they really understand the challenges that these young students have and how to help address those, whether they're, food insecurity, childcare needs, transportation, right, issues, and sort of business skills, soft training. How do you interview? How do you shake hands and look people in the eyes? And sort of how do you present yourself? Appropriate attire, for the workplace. Like all of these things we provide and train to the young adults. And so now what happens is, Steve, it's really word of mouth. And we've got so many applicants for the limited number of programs that we have funding for to do that we have to interview. And what we find, though, is that there are a lot of people that, aren't ready or don't have the commitment or, because it's a full-time effort, and you really got to give it your all. This exams are not easy. Many of the young adults, like I said, have had challenging, lives up to this point, and there's competing demands. And so now we get most of our cohorts from word of mouth applications. They told me over 1,000 applicants to the last cohort of 20 CNAs.
Oh, now, that must be a heartbreaker to say no to so many people.
Yeah, but it does tell you, though, like that there's both a demand and a supply here, that we can solve the workforce shortage crisis issue, especially in aging services, with, people in our community that need and are ready for, an opportunity to shine. And it's not easy. And there are a lot of barriers. And not everybody makes it through. There's reasons, and people along the way sometimes can't complete, have other barriers to completion, right. The exams, like I said, but it works and they're there. And then what happens is, like, once you're there and getting to the retention rates, like they already know exactly what they're getting into, Steve. They've spent, an average of 100 hours, let's say, over those 3 months up on the floors, working with their future colleagues, right? With the patients they're going to be caring for. Like, so they know exactly what it is they're getting into. And it's I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
For retention.
So, oh man, so one of the things, and this I find this that's really hard for me, is when I talk to leaders like you. It comes sort of so naturally to create environments where it's wonderful to work there that I think that, I mean, because I still find myself asking, well, you've got this 10% turnover. I'll bet I could find nursing homes that are paying the same wage in your same neighborhoods who have 50 and 60% and 70% turnover, which means you've got a group of people who love coming to work every day. And over there, they don't have a group of people who love coming to work. Maybe they hate coming to work. What's the difference?
Well, I mean, that's a really good $64,000 question, Steve. I may be able to have some insights or part answers. I think, for us and for my tenure at Jewish Home, honestly, a lot of it was pandemic related, unfortunately, right? It was just, that's what happened, right? I started there in 2018. So I had a couple of years to do that,
right.
Due diligence and the deep inquiry and get to know things and start on a path. And then the pandemic hit. And as horrible as it was, and it was devastating, it's people shined, they were true heroes, and you see it. And I saw it every day, 7 days a week, for months. And that creates, it's almost like, forging leaders through the fire, right? Everybody who was there and worked through that crisis, hopefully the crisis of a lifetime, not to be repeated. They're so committed, right? And they're so proud of what they did. And there's sort of this virtual upward cycle too, when you are there during these crises and you're leading from the front and you're rolling up your sleeves and helping out where necessary and appreciating and thanking the staff. When that's all genuine, which was like the easiest thing in the world to do in the pandemic, because it's just, that's what you do. It's remarkable, because I really believe that the vast majority of people, they're great people. Humans are good people.
That's right. Absolutely.
Right. We sometimes do terrible things. I mean, don't get me wrong. But like humans and people at work, like they want to do well and they want to get satisfaction out of their job. And so our job is just to not trip them up and get in their way. So we don't have to micromanage and sort of, tell people how to behave. Like good people in their heart are good. They'll know what's right and they'll know what to do. And if you recognize that, show that you appreciate that, it goes way more than any paycheck will, honestly. People will put up on their wall, I've seen like a handwritten thank you that I'll write, let's say, because somebody came in on the weekend and did something really special and helped out when we were understand and took on this job. And not because they were getting paid to do it, like they knew we needed it and they came in and helped. Like that thing is up on their office, like they're so proud of it. It's on the wall behind it's I think that, and I think a good leader, you don't let those opportunities go to waste. You make sure that you acknowledge and appreciate when it's genuine. And in the pandemic, you've got so many opportunities for it to be genuine because you see it like all around you. So I think that helped a lot. And then people, feel a sense of togetherness, of a team, that we made it through together. We survived and led. And I made sure they understood how proud I was of them and showed them objective data on the outcomes. How many lives like we saved of hundreds of older adults that are at the highest risk of morbidity and mortality from COVID. And we cared for them and had incredibly high success rates in recovery. Like that's remarkable.
Yeah, I think the thing I hear coming through, and I think that leaders often don't appreciate the value of, is standing for something important, that you're actually making a difference in the world, that you're not like every other, in my case, every other media company in the industry, in your case, and every other nursing home out there, that you're doing something that's really unique and special and changing the world, changing people's lives. So I love that. Let's talk. We only have a couple minutes left, but I want to talk a little bit more about Skill Springs and what you're doing, because I think that the thing I worry about is, we've talked about all these wonderful things, that it's people look at that and say, oh man, that's really, really cool. I don't think we could ever do that. I don't think we could afford it. I don't even know where to get started. And and you're actually working on helping other people do this, right? And so I'd really like to have you talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Steve. I'm excited to talk about that. So a couple of years ago, we realized that this program is so successful that, we have an opportunity and actually an obligation from our viewpoint of making it available to others, because it's just so wildly successful. People need it now more than ever, in terms of workforce and the shortage crisis, and let's go do it. So I hired some people, with much more experience and smarter than me on how to launch companies, how to build something and sell it to someone else to buy, the service and replicate the model in different geographies. And I'm really excited to say we're doing it. We've been down parallel paths, I'd say, over the last 18 months of major expansion locally, with our state and city funding and individual philanthropists that I've been able to generate 2 7-figure gifts, to this program, so that we can provide more training to more people. And we've now spread to 4 other nonprofit aging service providers in our geography and our training cohorts for them. And most recently, got our first signed contract out in another geography in Louisville, Kentucky, to do our program for someone else and find, curate, prepare, train, and then the commitment on the partner's end is to hire, right? Because that's what they want to do anyway. And then you've got staff. And we're really excited about that. And we're very excited to do it, I think nationally. I'm not saying it is the solution to the workforce shortage crisis, but I firmly believe that it is a very good and proven, solution. It's not an idea that we came up with yesterday. Like I said, we started this 16 years ago, and the young adult program 9 years ago. And we've graduated, well over 1,000 graduates. So we know what we're doing and how to do it. And we would love to work with places that are interested in doing this. The high school program is, again, different, longitudinal, longer, embedded in the community. We actually did do that for a place, Ovation Communities, out in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, several years ago. And it's working, and they're doing it, and it's fabulous. And the young adult program now we've done with 4 other partners locally, and our first customer in a distant geography in Louisville coming up now.
And so what's it cost to do this? What's the financial commitment? I mean, I think there are 2 commitments. There's sort of the human commitment, but I assume there's a dollar commitment as well.
Yeah. We do it for it costs us about $15,000 per student, right? All in. That includes like paid internships for the students while they're working and when they're up on the floor full-time doing activities, transportation costs, program costs, the actual course work itself that we partner with community colleges on providing, and all of the support services and et cetera, et cetera. So, we're trying to do it for less, and we're going to be working with partners and charging less because we want to figure out how to scale. And we're using some digital solutions that we've built and some platforms that are enablers across multiple geographies that we're partnering with so that we can do it for significantly less. But when I talk to folks, even $15,000, it's not a very big number when you look at the cost of all the turnover that people have and all of the, vacancies and all of the, expensive outsourcing and agency fees and things like that. So it's about that. The high school program we can do for about $6,000 per student per year, which is a remarkably low number if you think about how incredibly successful that is. And the young adult program is about $15,000 per student.
And does that include, just curious, does that include housing?
No, that does not include housing. Okay. Transportation, yes, but housing, no.
Okay. Yeah. I think that again, there are solutions out there. We've got to get more creative. We've got to think, about people. And I think one of the reluctances, and I think one of the things that you've done that's so beautiful is that one of the reasons operators are reluctant to invest that kind of money is they think, well, what if I train them and they go away? And my answer, obviously your answer is, well, create a work environment where people want to stay, right? And then that's not a problem. So,
yeah. And I've always told people, and what I've seen for my 6 years at Jewish Home is clear. There's a big barrier to getting someone's foot in the door, whether that's a new employee or a visitor or, a family member who wants to place their loved one. Like nobody wants to come in for all these societal ageist reasons.
That's right.
And when someone comes in, and we see this with the students, and they spend time and they build relationships with the older residents, like they love it. It's fulfilling and rewarding, and I don't have to sell them on anything. Like they're sold and they stay, and it's fulfilling and rewarding and enriching. So it's that initial hurdle we got to get folks over.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta come. I gotta come visit. I gotta come visit. Gotta come visit.
Open invitation, Steve.
You know, I think Nick is in DC in the fall, and I think I'll figure out how to wrap around because I'll be on that side of the country. But I would. This is amazing. For me, so much of this is just about saying to operators there are ways to solve these problems that feel intractable, that you need to spend time paying attention to people like Jeff and others who've already figured it out, and you learn from their feet and you steal from them like crazy, or maybe you contract with them. But it's all about improving the lives of the people who live and work in our business. And in doing that, we leave the world a better place. And so with that, thank you very much. This has been fantastic. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you for your passion, and we will see you all next week. If you'd hold on for just a minute after we're done, and just like to debrief.
Thank you, Steve.